If you are in beauty TikTok at all these days, you have likely seen the term underconsumption trending. Basically, underconsumption is a movement in opposition to this overconsumption that is so pervasive in today's day and age, especially on TikTok. People are just buying way too many beauty products. People are buying way too much clothing. There's too much Amazon shopping, too much online shopping in general. And underconsumption is a way to sort of say, look at what you already have, look at the way you are consuming stuff, and try to rethink that, really try to examine it. I talk about this kind of thing all of the time in my content because I have been on a conscious consumer journey myself for the past 5 or so years. I used to buy way too much makeup. That is really how I got into rethinking my purchases in general. Now I try not to buy too much makeup. I try to buy clothing secondhand or go to clothing swaps. I have become an all-round more conscious consumer, but I am particularly interested in the way that the beauty community here on YouTube, but also on TikTok, functions and how that has changed over the years. If anything, I think it has gotten worse. I think that people are consuming more and more makeup and beauty products. But at the same time, we have seen some positive movements, such as this overconsumption. I'm just going to refer to it as a movement. I was actually going to do this video get ready with me style, but I find that I get so distracted when I do those videos because I spend half of it just talking about the products that I am putting on my face, and then I don't have enough time to talk about the actual discussion that I was intending. I can link my last get ready with me, but basically there was a ton of topics that I was planning to hit on and I just didn't have time for it because I was yapping away about the blushes, the bronzers, the concealers that I was putting on my face while doing the video. So anyways, today this is just going to be a discussion and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on underconsumption, if I think it's a positive movement, if it's going to be really moving the needle forward in terms of the current state we're in, the climate crisis. So let's get right into it. While I was preparing for this video, I actually made a conscious choice to not watch that much underconsumption content. Like I watched a bunch of TikToks about it, but I didn't watch too many YouTube breakdowns because I didn't want it to influence too much about what I was going to say. Kelly Gooch had a video where she was talking about underconsumption and I will link that below. Shauna Rapari has done a bunch of them. We talk about a lot of the same topics generally, so I didn't want to watch her videos because I really thought that it might influence my own. But Kelly's video was more focused on the ways that you can counter overconsumption in your own life, like how you can use specific products in a way that will help you get the most out of those products and appreciating what you already have. So I do want to touch on some of those points briefly because it could be helpful, but these are all things that I have discussed before. I have done a lot of videos about conscious consumerism, so I will link my playlist about that here. But first of all, okay, hitting pan. I have done a lot of project pan videos, which is basically where you try to finish off what you already have. And this is what pan looks like. If you have not seen it before, it is where you hit the bottom of a product. If you are not seeing this regularly in your products, you probably have too many. Here's another example of one. But I used to never finish any of my products. I used to never hit pan because I simply had so many of them. It just wasn't possible. And I think that that is a sign that it was too much. It just didn't occur to me that I should be finishing off my products. But now I try to have more of a only bring stuff in when I have finished other products. But yeah, you should be aiming to be hitting pan or finishing pretty much all of your products. I know it's a lot harder for powder products, but it's more satisfying because you can see them as they progress. Another tip I have is to actually dig inside your products like this to get everything out, because there's a lot more in there that you just aren't able to access unless you dig everything out. Here's another one. This is a bronzer. Especially with lipsticks, there is just so much hiding in those things that, especially if you love these products, you should be digging in there and getting every last drop out of them. I also like to remove the stoppers in my concealers. So this LYS one, I did that recently and there was quite a bit of product still remaining in there that you can really only access if you remove the stopper. I also love to have makeup swaps with my friends, or people will declutter things to me. So this moisturizer and this bronzer, I had friends declutter these to me. They were just going to go in the garbage anyways. So I was happy to take them on. If you have products that you don't like but are still in good working condition, pass them on to friends and family. You know, reuse containers that you have that are still perfectly good, especially if you're depotting products. I put that Milk makeup into the Charlotte Tilbury container. It worked very well until I finished that up entirely. I have this MAC paint pot. Reuse these things, especially for like glass containers. This is nice. This is a nice container to house your product. And the final tip I will say is try to use products in ways that they were not necessarily intended for. So I have this lovely lip liner from NYX. It's this great auburn color, and I don't have any eyeliners like this. So I actually started using this as an eyeliner, and it works beautifully. I think I was wearing this in my last video that I filmed, especially because I have green eyes. I feel like the reddish purple hint really brings out the color, and this way I don't have to go out and buy another product that is specifically for the eyes. And then I have this mascara, which is quite dried up, and so I actually use it as a brow gel. Don't do this if it is like a full-on regular mascara, but if you have fairly dark brows and the mascara is pretty much dried up, then this works a treat, and it's a way to get every last drop out of it. So these are just some of my top tips to make sure that you are fully enjoying every item in your makeup collection, and so that you are not over-consuming where you don't need to be. Now, I found this anti-consumerism push interesting and kind of different from other specific trends I've seen recently. Do you guys remember the de-influencing trend on TikTok? I mean, that was big for a while, but did it last? Not really. But I find it interesting because it's not so much just about products, I don't think. Part of it is also, it's showing lifestyles, and it's showing that most people do not live the way that influencers live. Like, so much of TikTok is such a curated aesthetic now, and everything you have in your home just needs to look nice, needs to look expensive, needs to look aesthetic, and it makes it seem like people are living these really aesthetic, curated lives. And I think seeing reminders of that all the time is not necessarily healthy for the average person, because it's not just that we like aspire to own certain items, it's also that we're aspiring to a certain lifestyle that is ultimately unattainable. And that is not just about, you know, coveting certain beauty items, but that's also affecting your self-esteem, I think. I mean, I feel this way even sometimes. A lot of the influencers I watch are more like myself, where they are quite critical of capitalism, and they are cognizant of how TikTok and Instagram and YouTube are basically trying to sell us products, and that is ultimately what influencers are these days. Basically, you know, they're sales agents. But I still enjoy my fair share of like your typical aesthetic influencer that is completely ignorant of everything going on in the world. And when I watch their content, I still feel myself like wanting what they have, looking at their apartments and being like, everything looks beautiful. I want all of the products. I don't fully buy into it because I have this, you know, critical piece in my mind. Obviously, I make content like this, but my first instinct is still to desire those items, and not even just desire those items, but desire that lifestyle. Like, we are now comparing ourselves to a level that I think goes beyond just wanting the new Rhode pocket blushes. It is now wanting the Rhode girl aesthetic, right? The it girl aesthetic, the clean girl aesthetic. This goes beyond just products, and this goes more into the kind of person that we want to be. And if you feel like you are not living up to that person and to that aesthetic, it can really affect your self-image and self-esteem beyond just the consumption aspect of it. And so I think that by showing regular people's lives, and, you know, we could call it underconsumption, we could call it normal consumption, we're seeing that influencer lifestyle, that's not normal. We don't need to aspire to that, because we will never achieve that, because it's not realistic. And what's realistic is using the same chipped mug every day for years, and for the walls of your apartment to look a little bit off, and you probably should repaint them, but you're probably not going to. And to have all of these completely normal but not aesthetic aspects of our lives and our homes, that reminder I think is sorely needed right now. Because now it's not just a question of feeling okay that we don't have the latest product, but also a question of feeling okay about ourselves and our lives, which is much deeper and more important feeling. And again, I am impacted by these feelings as well. I think I mentioned before, but I have been trying to make changes, small changes to my apartment for years now. It started with, I don't know how many of you have been watching since then, but when we changed these 3 pictures in the background, we used to have just one image that was not very cute. Yeah, I just decided that we were going to be living in this apartment for a while and we needed to make there was a lot of changes that I wanted to make. So slowly I started to make those changes. You can see those images. You can see the bookshelves kind of in the background and this mirror here. I just got these today actually because we are getting some new shelves in our sort of living room area. So I'm constantly making these changes and I'm constantly looking around and seeing things that I want to change and thinking about how long it will take to implement those changes and how much it will cost. And I do have to think about who these changes are for and make sure that I'm making them for myself and my partner, and it's not some weird desire to have a more aesthetic apartment for TikTok or whatever. I mean, not that I show my apartment on TikTok, so I don't think it would be relevant, but with everything, I think you need to be making sure that you want to do this for you, and regardless of if anyone would see these changes, would you still want them to be done? And for me so far the answer has been yes, but I think with some products, when I get swept up in beauty trends and I want the new Rhode pocket blushes or the Rare Beauty blush or whatever, I don't think that is for me. I think that is for the aesthetic, that is for YouTube, that is for TikTok. And so luckily I have been able to resist those urges. Just yesterday I was talking to a friend, basically self-esteem pertaining to our spaces. We both, we live in Toronto, we live in small apartments with our partners, and both of us feel we just do not have enough space, and we never feel we have control over our spaces. We both always feel as if our spaces are messy and we have too much, but we're constantly trying to declutter and minimalize, but we just do not have the space, and it feels like everyone else has figured out what to do and good storage solutions, or they're just super minimalist. But we feel this self-consciousness when we go to other people's places and they seem so nice and curated and not messy, and then our own apartments just feel the complete opposite, and we feel as if we cannot ever keep up. And I think if it's just the two of us, probably everyone is feeling this way because we are comparing ourselves to such a high standard of what we see online and what we see on our friends, best days, their apartment's most clean state, because that is when they're having people over, We're just always constantly comparing ourselves to other people and to the best sides of other people. We're just constantly comparing ourselves to other people, whether in real life or on TikTok. And I think we should actually entirely take influencer homes out of the equation, because they set such an impossible standard for the rest of us, impossible even when compared to our cleanest, wealthiest, most aesthetic friend's apartment, because these influencers spend their lives and their workday creating that aesthetic that is literally their job. All of this to say that what I appreciate about underconsumption is not just saying, make sure that you get everything out of your product, but it's also saying, hey, if you have one blush and you have been using that same blush for 5 years, that's okay. If you have one mug and you have been using that same mug for 5 years, that's okay. It becomes not just about the product, it becomes about the lifestyle and the way that you are consuming stuff, but also living your life. Now, how much hope do I have in underconsumption as a whole? As much as I am a fan of this movement, I don't think that this is a long-term fix to the consumerism issue that we have in the West, because ultimately, I think this is just going to be a short trend in the way that de-influencing was. So I guess I should give a little bit more background on de-influencing. Basically, I want to say about 6 months to a year ago, there was this whole trend where people on TikTok, in a way that would poke fun at influencing, they would do de-influencing videos. So they would be like, do not buy this, it's bad because of this. But often what those videos would turn into would be a, don't buy this, buy that. So instead of saying, I really disliked this mascara, do not buy it, do not spend your money, it is not worth the high-end price tag, I would say, hey, instead you should buy this CoverGirl Peacock Flare. It's a lot less expensive, so you'll save a lot of money. It's a dupe, but it's even better. Save your money, do not buy this, I'm de-influencing you from this, and I'm instead influencing you to buy this. And ultimately, what does that achieve? That's not changing the equation in any way, shape, or form. We are just sort of going against the grain, I guess, in terms of which products we are suggesting. So that is not what underconsumption is about, happily, but that is why I'm a little bit more optimistic about underconsumption than I was about de-influencing. That being said, I do not know if it will last any longer than de-influencing did. Because now, like, do you see any TikToks about de-influencing anymore? I can't remember the last time I saw that hashtag or that word, to be honest. And when I was preparing for this video, I actually had to take a minute to think and to remember what it was, because I was like, I know there was something similar to underconsumption that was trending a while ago, but what was it? It wasn't like on the tip of my tongue because I don't see people talking about it anymore. I have only seen people sort of comparing underconsumption to it, you know, within the context of videos like this. I actually went to TikTok just now and I searched de-influencing because I was curious, is anyone still using this? And there were a couple of people who were doing like a weekly de-influencing type of video, but mostly it was people who were like hashtagging overconsumption or underconsumption and de-influencing, or like putting that in the title of the video or on the screen itself to sort of link these two terms, but it wasn't people making videos specifically about de-influencing. Now, maybe this is because underconsumption is what is trending now, so they want to tie that in, but I just wanted to point out that de-influencing has sort of been left by the wayside. People are not so into that anymore, and I kind of suspect that that's how it will be with underconsumption, but maybe some other term will become popular and we will see all three of these terms be linked. It's hard to predict. I do hope, of course, that underconsumption will last longer, or maybe it'll turn into normal consumption. I did see a lot of people using both the terms normal consumption and underconsumption because they kind of are the same thing. There would be someone talking about how they saw a video on underconsumption where a person was saying that they only have 3 bags, and so that's underconsumption, that's minimalism. And this person who was talking about that first video was like, that's not underconsumption, that's just normal. Like, it's perfectly normal to own 3 bags, and, you know, some people don't even own 3 bags. So I totally get why you would refer to it as normal consumption. I think that what I do now is underconsumption, but I think if you looked at like my stuff, my items, my beauty products, and my clothes, you would think that I overconsume, but it's just that I have so much stuff that I have not managed to sort of get out of my collection. You know what I mean? Like, it really depends on the category. I think with hair stuff, I definitely underconsume. I don't use basically anything in my hair. Like, sometimes I'll use a conditioner, but that's it. But then with like makeup products, I mean, this is like a regular face of makeup to me. I just enjoy wearing makeup, and I think I always will have a larger than average makeup collection. Same with clothing, but a lot of it I get at clothing swaps, and I don't buy anything new. So to me, that it doesn't quite feel like overconsumption in the same way, because it is still ethical, it is still sustainable. But I'm off on a whole other rant right now, so let me get back to my notes. What else did I say? I do think that underconsumption is more helpful than de-influencing, because that trend was often about influencing people to just purchase different items, whereas this is now a more fulsome way of looking at our lives and all of the stuff in our lives at a broader level rather than just on a product by product basis. It's a way of looking at what you do when you get up in the morning and everything you use, rather than just like, oh, am I using this blush or this blush, you know? Yeah, I guess my prediction is that we will continue to see trends like this in the future as more people become more aware of the harms of overconsumption. These trends will rise up in opposition to the overconsumption that will continue to be pervasive. Like, I don't see that stopping anytime soon with Amazon links and TikTok shop and just the way that influencers monetize their content and all of the products that they use. I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I do see more people potentially in future recognizing and being more critical of that. I think I'm ultimately not that hopeful because like, this ain't my first rodeo. I think someone who is just becoming more aware about the climate crisis and recognizing what overconsumption is would be like, wow, this changes everything. My worldview has totally shifted, and everyone else's worldview is also going to shift now that they have become aware of overconsumption and underconsumption. At least that's how I felt when I first started learning about makeup no-buys and project pans and conscious consumer journeys. I was like, oh, everyone else is obviously going to catch on and this is going to change everything. Sadly, no. It was just me. I think that like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram, these kinds of platforms where influencers exist, overall do more harm than good. Influencers who sell us product, they are the norm. People who are talking about underconsumption, they are going against the grain. It seems to me like underconsumption is trending a lot simply because of the space and the niche that I'm in on these websites. But I bet someone like, I don't know, Emma Rose, who's someone that I follow because I think she has a super aesthetic lifestyle, for example, I don't think she's aware of this at all. I don't think it has passed her radar because she is not in these niches and she doesn't recognize that she is over-consuming. She just hasn't reached that breaking point yet. So I don't think that a temporary trend like underconsumption can undo everything that TikTok has done for like Amazon links and TikTok shop and Sephora. The most that it can do is minimize purchases for a short period of time for a certain segment of people who have now been made aware. I mean, overall, if you as a viewer think about YouTube and TikTok, do you think that without these platforms, you would have purchased the same number of things that you have? Do you think all of the beauty purchases, all the clothing purchases, you would have made the decision to purchase all of those on your own without the influence of those platforms? Like, I don't know, answer me down below. I certainly don't think so. I am always being influenced by these platforms, even though I know better. So yes, keep engaging with overconsumption and underconsumption TikToks and YouTube videos, because that is what is going to help these movements grow, and that is what is going to help the content creators who make this content see that this is useful content, and it will encourage them to keep making it, and it will become more cool for this to be the type of content that is made. As I mentioned, some of the people who are still making videos about de-influencing, they started when de-influencing was just trending, and they're still making these videos now because people keep engaging with them, because they keep enjoying them. So if you engage with these underconsumption videos, people will continue making them and showing what is normal and showing the other side to overconsumption. So I do want to encourage that. I mean, there's someone who I follow on TikTok who has like over 15,000 followers. She's from Wales. I will show a TikTok or a picture of her here. And she just talks about how much makeup she has and how she's on this conscious consumerism journey and she is trying to declutter it. And she's realizing what an issue this is. So obviously, you know, she has 15,000 followers. That is a ton. That's a lot of people who are engaging with this kind of content. And this is what we need more of. When I think about the long run, I do think that at a certain point, it will no longer be cool to do massive clothing hauls or massive PR unboxings of makeup products, because enough of the population or the viewers will see this as a problem that it simply won't be accepted. Right now, I think in certain niches, it is recognized as a problem. Like, for example, if myself or even like Sarah Rose or Kelly Gooch were to do a video that was basically like a haul from Shein, I think our viewers would be like kind of upset. And even on the average Shein haul, I think there is usually like at least one person who is like, hey, you know, fast fashion is bad, right? Like, this is, the workers are not treated well. This clothing is going to fall apart after one wear. Like, you should not be encouraging people to be doing Shein hauls. But that is not the majority. And so these videos continue to be made and continue to be popular, despite there occasionally being backlash. I don't think that it's rare anymore to see negative comments about H&M hauls or like massive PR unboxings. You know, you've seen the TikToks and the YouTube videos, but those comments are still the minority. And I think there will reach a tipping point after which it will not be as accepted anymore. Now it's still accepted, although not accepted by anyone, but someday it will be accepted by some people, but not most. It's sort of in the way that I think one day people won't be eating meat anymore. Maybe it'll be lab grown, but I don't think that like eating regular meat will be as accepted anymore, just because it's just simply too wasteful. The climate crisis hasn't yet reached that point, but at a certain point, like, you won't be able to justify how much resources it takes up to feed people meat, basically. I kind of think the same thing about this overconsumption we're seeing now. One day people will look back at TikTok videos of these massive clothing hauls and be like, how did they think that was okay? Like, how was there ever a time when that was okay? We can compare this now to looking back at our parents or our grandparents' generation, you know, where everyone would smoke all the time and be like, how did they think that was okay? How did they think that that wasn't bad for you? How was there smoking on airplanes? Like, that to us is just bananas. I think it will be the same thing for maybe our grandchildren's generation or 2 generations after that. It's hard to know what the tipping point will be and how long it will take, but I think one day we will reach that point. I'm just not optimistic that it will be anytime soon. I just think we're too far out from that right now. So, do I have hope in general? I did kind of address this before, but I started this channel to try to hold myself accountable and also to try to teach other people what I had learned about overconsumption and how it had harmed not just like the environment, but also myself. My relationship to makeup is so much better, and I am so much more adventurous now than I was when I had way more makeup, when I was constantly buying stuff. Like, I just feel like an overall much healthier in my brain space and much better consumer because I buy so much less. And I want to show other people the way as well, in the hopes that I can help them to see why going on a makeup no buy or low buy can be helpful. So of course I am broadly in favor of using these platforms for anti-capitalist means, but I think we are just up against such a challenging obstacle because the platforms were built to facilitate consumption, right? Like, capitalism is built into these platforms. So countering that is not impossible, but it is going against the grain. Yes, movements like de-influencing and underconsumption are helpful. I think legislation is actually a lot more effective, but I don't see the government, you know, penalizing big business for making too much stuff and making too much money anytime soon. So I suppose for now we have to put our faith in each other, in these movements, in our communities, and hope that preaching underconsumption will be effective enough to mitigate the climate crisis for now. So that is everything that I have to say for today. I would love to hear your comments down below. I find underconsumption such an interesting little niche going on right now, and I really hope it continues. I will probably be making some content about it on TikTok. I haven't really figured out how to, because like my whole thing is about underconsumption, so I'm like, what else can I say? But I did want to do this video. So I will talk to you next week. Bye.